you like narrative games. Hey.
Narrative games are really exciting right now because they're really growing in the ways that they explore and try to tell stories.
Narratives and games are awesome because there's so many weird stories that you can tell.
I think it is very exciting to work in an area that is growing and helping redefine what our expectations of games can be. Narrative games have huge artistic potential because they can take so many different forms.
We really believe that the most exciting place in video games right now is narrative. There is so much space to be explored, so many opportunities to find new ways to tell stories through games.
I remember always finding narrative games sort of my favorite to play. I just want to actually be in it and get to make choices and then see the consequences of those choices.
It's a new means through which we are trying to find ways to tell stories. It's a millennia-long history of humans handing down tool sets and skill sets throughout the generations that help us work out how best to express the ideas that we have and the stories that we want to tell about who we are, when we are, where we are, and who we're with.
Narrative games are exciting right now because they engage with the core question of games for me, which is how do you tell a story through interactive means?
I think one of the most exciting things about narrative design within game development is that people are starting to take cues in a big way from interactive fiction, which traditionally has been very text-based. But now we're starting to see things like Inkle and Ink as a format in general make it possible to make games using the lessons learned from interactive fiction.
Narrative games may not reveal themselves fully in the first 30 seconds to 5 minutes of play or so. It's a game that you kind of want to sit down in a dark, quiet, alone place and really sink into. If anyone's ever been to a game event, you know that that is not the atmosphere that you normally get.
They're very exciting places to be. There's a lot of people going around. There's usually a ton of games and very limited amount of time that you're there. And I think that the problem with physical events for narrative games is that a lot of narrative games do well in a setting where you're relaxed, where you're calm, you're comfortable, you're like wrapped up in a blanket, you have some tea. You really want your focus on the game, but the physical event itself is not really a great environment for that. It's really distracting, especially when you have friends with you and beside you and they're like tugging you away to see something else.
There are big limitations to them, particularly for a game that's a little more thoughtful, maybe takes a little longer to get into, something you really want to sit down and look at, or just, look at in the comfort of your own home. We like meeting people face to face, we like meeting other developers, all of that is great. It's nice to have a more intimate experience for a convention when possible, and, I hope this is a chance to do that.
Chiefly, I think it is expensive. For small teams, you have to be very careful about how you spend your budget. I'm not just talking about money, but production time. To have all of your devs travel to each event would mean our productivity would take a huge hit.
Planes are expensive and hotels are expensive. There's a lot of organizational cost that kind of goes into that. It needs a lot of energy to go to these things, especially if you have a booth you have to set up. That can take an entire day.
Events are not suited to most games, but narrative ones in particular, because they're treated as if it's like a sales convention. Playing a game for 10 minutes is not like watching a trailer, and it will never be. And even a game trailer can't actually make you feel what it's like to play that game.
Conventions are fantastic. It's a great way for developers and creators to connect directly with fans. And we wanted to find a way to do that digitally so that these developers of great narrative games could reach people all over the world.
I'm not sure if I specifically chose games to tell the story of Other Waters. In a sense, I think the story chose games. The story emerged out of, for me, an interest in how you could make a narrative game with text elements, with UI elements, and how you could make that also an exploration game by playing as the AI in the suit of a biologist. You are like specifically interacting with all of the systems that exist within the suit, and you're interacting with the biologists themselves, and so there's all of these obvious narrative elements to that. But there's something about that interaction between you and the co-inhabitor of your suit, you and your symbiotic partner in your exploration of this planet, that makes it a uniquely gamey story to me.
I think this is particularly relevant to Mutazione because what we're making is a mutant soap opera. It's a sort of it's built on a soap opera format. It uses a lot of storytelling derived from long-running TV shows, and a lot of our influences are TV related. Games brings together many different disciplines. It brings so film, theatre, television, literature. Transposing that into a game environment allows you to do interesting things with the pace and path that players take through that story and the parts of it that they choose to pursue, how we can represent and reinvent forms that are already out there in games. That's really exciting to me.
NeoCab is a game about survival. It started with a storytelling possibility of that magical moment when a complete stranger jumps into a cab. Every person in a city has a story, right? What if we had the opportunity to share those and explore those interactively, right? A conversation with a stranger in a safe environment, meeting a character, interacting with them, figuring them out, and figuring out where your story goes together. That's unique to games.
Where games are really good at is putting a player into the shoes of someone else, let players experience a problem for themselves and come to their own conclusions. And through this, they are very strong in conveying a particular standpoint or a problem in itself.
Cults are really weird. You know, for this game, being able to put someone into it and then seeing multiple sides of the story. Like we always talk about, you know, there's 2 sides to every story, or there's 3 sides to every story. In a movie or a book or whatever, you get one version of that story. In a game, I think we have the chance to show people different things that could happen. And just letting them see more sides to a story than you could ever see in another medium.
I totally fall for bad boys, but it's okay because in Boyfriend Dungeon, it's a safe environment to do so.
Visual novels,
Narrative.
we love them.
Narrative.
There's male, female, non-binary, romance options. There's a lot of people of color, and that's really important to me, and I think a lot of people, but also have a lot of different writers kind of contribute to this to make it a wholesome, inclusive dating sim dungeon crawler.
Where the Water Tastes Like Wine is a game about uncovering the stories that haven't normally been told in American history specifically. That's both the player's narrative mission and what they're hopefully learning in the game is seeing these stories that they may not already know about. And I really like that parallel, I guess, between what the character in the game is doing and what the player is actually doing by playing the game.
Games as a medium, the limitations kind of encourage abstraction and leaving things to the player's imagination, which is perfectly suited to our game Genesis Noir, where we're dealing with the creation of stars and the universe and things that are so large and abstract that we can't represent them realistically. Being able to interact with an abstracted representation of that and have characters that can be simplified really supports that story that we want to tell.
One of our goals for LudoNarraCon is to enable developers to kind of lift the lid on their creative process and have really meaningful conversations with fans about the games that they're making. We've convinced some people to come on a bit of a crazy journey and put it together in about 6 months. We love the developers who are focused on working in this space, and it is a real honor and pleasure to work with so many great teams. We hope to learn a lot from this LudoNarraCon, and we really want to hear your feedback. This is a real learning exercise
Stay tuned to see behind-the-scenes content from your favorite narrative games. Enjoy LudoNarraCon.
That is a great question.
That one's terrible. You should use that one.
You get the idea.